Last year, I set out to turn my scraps into an epic starry quilt. And maybe I bit off a little bit more than I can chew. But you know what they say? If you shoot for the moon, even if you miss, you might land amongst the stars. Or in my case, sleep amongst the stars. But first I need to get through the messy middle where I feel lost in space. I've had a couple of really busy months, but as the season is really turning to fall, I think it's perfect weather to spend some afternoons behind the sewing machine. And because I've been so busy, I did make some progress on the quilt. However, it felt very chaotic. I was so distracted and I kept making mistakes. I don't know whether it's because I was just tired or my mind was elsewhere. Maybe it's perimenopause, but instead of doubling down on this plan that I made in the start and holding on to rules and restrictions that I put on myself, I think it's time to give myself some grace and pivot. But first, let me go back in time a little bit and show you some of that chaotic progress that I've been making. The last couple of weeks I've been slowly working on the quilt, doing little bits here and there, maybe half an hour, and I managed to finish all the small friendship stars. So those are going to make up the constellation I was talking about. The only thing is I was cutting 16 of them when I only need 12. So those are done. And then I started on friendship stars with dark fabrics. Those are going to blend in more to the background, but giving it more texture. I really do love the look of the small friendship stars, so I think that's a good way to add character to the quilt. So lots of tiny half square triangles ready. It is a bit chaotic, but I think if I'm working on multiple blocks at a time, I can make sure they all use sort of the same scraps and they look alike. At least that's the theory. We'll see in the end if that all pans out, but for now, that's the plan. And then I got to work blissfully unaware of a classic mistake that I made. This is what I have so far, and I do think it needs more fabric, so I'm going to cut this up as well to get some more variety. I did end up buying a couple of meters of poplin, organic poplin, because I just don't have enough scraps. I was sewing all my half square triangles using the 4 at a time method, and I didn't realize it, but apparently it's a controversial choice to do it this way, since all 4 sides end up being on the bias. But I have to admit, even after doing so many of them, I don't mind it at all that those sides are on the bias, but maybe that's just because these star units were very small. And it was nice that I was able to chain piece them like this. Working on all these tiny half square triangles and not really having a good system to organize everything, it did feel a little bit chaotic. It might look like chaos, but it is progress. Progress it definitely was, but that also meant lots of trimming. I've been making progress, but I'm not going as fast as I thought I would. It feels like I'm in a race with daylight, because with the dark fabrics, it's so hard to see what I'm doing. I'm just going to put on something on YouTube, video or audiobook, and keep going. Oh, I'm tired, but I need to show you what I did, but somehow not somehow, I just didn't count. I didn't count, but now I have 17 friendship star units. Those are not done, but most of them are webbed, so they are all attached with little threads in between, and that way it's easier to do the next step, and it saves me from switching things up while sewing. Now, I'm not 100% sure that I sewed everything together correctly, but I'll find out. And honestly, if I did switch one of the points, I think I'll just leave it. I think it's going to blend in with the entire quilt, so it should be fine. I had a bit of a slow start today, but I'm finally going to get started. I mean, there's nothing wrong with a slow start, but I think I was procrastinating setting up the camera and everything. So this is what I have so far. And I didn't do any pressing up until now. I just did some finger pressing, but I'll press the blocks once they're all completely sewn up. The good news is these are all finished. The yellow stars and the blue stars. The bad news is they are all too small. I misread the instructions and I took the finished size for what to cut. So they're all like way smaller. There's more good news because it doesn't really matter. Maybe that's why I didn't pay enough attention in the first place, because I can compensate by adding larger strips of fabric around it to make up the rest of the block. But it's like, wow, amazing. Like, cut, measure, read once, cut once. Yeah, great. However, I have a plan. So you can see this one, I haven't trimmed it yet, and there's just a little bit of unevenness around the edges. I'm going to do the slightest trim so that it's as straight as possible. And then I can add the pieces on the side here before I add the last part there. And then I'll use whole fabric or leftover pieces to add the strip on this side. And then I can use a big piece to fill out the block and trim it down to 9 inch. and you'll never know that this one was actually too small. I have to admit, I almost didn't show you this part. The mistakes, the frustration, but then I realized if I only show you the highlights, it feels like I'm lying to you about what creativity actually looks like. So this is what happened the last couple of months with this quilt. And why show this struggle? Because if you've never made a big creative project, you might think it comes easy for somebody that's been sewing for 20 plus years. But in reality, doubts, pivoting, frustration, can be just as much part of a creative project as the highlights that you see on social media. So I'm hoping that next time when you're sewing and struggling, you won't think it's just you. Trust me, it's not just you. Behind the scenes of all those reels and YouTube videos of pretty end results, there's probably struggles and things going on that you will never know about. In the end, you have to keep going, you have to keep sewing, and that's what I did. I was finally at a point in the process where not everything felt like a struggle. I could just pick up pieces of fabric, sew them together. No math, no measurements, just vibes. And it made me realize that maybe I should approach the project slightly different. I do still like a challenge, but maybe this challenge doesn't have to be a struggle all the way. Like maybe doing a big size quilt with scraps is enough of a challenge, and I don't need to add on doing lots of different quilt blocks as well. So maybe I can simplify the project just a little bit so that it's more enjoyable to work on. A lot of progress today, and it feels like I went from chaos to organized because these are all the blocks that have been trimmed but still need some pieces. Here I have some offcuts that I either going to sew onto one of the blocks, but I think they are all too big for these. So what I might do is combine them into a bigger piece of fabric and then attach them to one of the blocks. And then lots of offcuts here. Still need to sort these because there are some usable pieces in there. Some are quite narrow, but still I might be able to incorporate them. And then at the back, these are finished or almost finished. I think most of them still need a trim, but what I've noticed, if I have to handle them a lot before I sew them into the actual quilt top, they fray. So I don't want to trim off too much, handle them, and then need to trim them again. So maybe now you understand why I want to simplify the quilt slightly. I think what I want to do is, instead of doing all the different blocks, I want to focus on the friendship star. So now I'm going to see if that works with the blocks that I already have. I think I need to lay out what I have and then just see what it looks like and if that's the route I want to take. these are all the blocks I have so far. And I'm noticing a couple of things. I love the small stars. I'm not so sure about the big stars. So now I'm contemplating maybe taking them out. I don't know. Maybe I should just leave it on my living room floor for a couple of days and decide then. They just stand out so much, and there should be more of them, more white stars. So maybe that solves the problem of them standing out too much. Okay, I just covered the star over there. And I do like it like this. But I also like big stars. But does it work? I don't know. And I really didn't have a clear idea of what I should do. But instead of sort of waiting it out, stalling the project, I decided, let me try something different. And I decided to make an Ohio star. Since the Ohio star block starts with making half square triangles, I thought, it's only a step up from what I've been doing so far. And at least I can keep the project going. My thought was that if I were to move forward with the Ohio stars through the process, the clarity would come whether or not I wanted those big stars in there or not. And then my first step was to sew together 2 squares to make 2 at a time half square triangles. Then cut them in half and press them open. And of course there was more trimming. And then you combine those half square triangles by flipping them and laying the contrasting colors on top of each other. Then you mark a line in the center and another line on either side of that center at 1/4 inch. Which is basically the same as if you're doing half square triangles. And I'm not giving you any measurements because apparently I can't be trusted with them. Once the markings are in place, you're ready to sew on either side of that center line. After sewing, cut the square in half and press open those halves. And once you have 4 of them, you can combine them with solid squares to assemble the Ohio star. However, not like this. Somehow I managed to twist one of the points of the star, and of course I didn't notice it and just kept sewing. Okay. Are you kidding me? This is so cute. I mean, even with the imperfections at the points here in the center. Oh, not this one. These still look so good. I mean, at least I was happy with it. I'm so happy with these. I finished 2 of them. And I managed to cut a lot of the little 4/4 square triangles. I don't know what the name is, but I have this whole stack and it was so satisfying. I was doubting if I should do it because lack of daylight, but in the end it turned out great. Still have to sew them all together, but I think it's a good point to stop for today. I look forward to getting more sewing in tomorrow. So this is where I'm at at the moment. This is sort of what the original plan looked like. So you have the 16 patches and the different stars. And there's a couple of things that I noticed. I don't necessarily love the 16 patches everywhere, and the friendship star over there, I think it's just a little bit too bright and it stands out too much. So I came up with a plan. So I took out some of the 16 patches and I've just put down a piece of fabric underneath, but that's what it's going to look like. So I'll have, instead of all 16 patches, there will be some solid blocks, and the friendship star over there, instead of having the bright white center, it's going to have a blue patch on top of it. I think having the stars where there's less white, less like this one, looks better. And then eventually when I get to do the border, I will use scraps to do a scrappy border. And I have a couple of pieces of fabric that I think would do well in the border as well. So the linen and the cotton batiste. I'm taking out some of the 16 patches. Well, I haven't made them yet. I'm going to see how many solid blocks I can get out of the piece of dark blue poplin and then take it from there.